All right, everyone. Today is the second installation of my Munch and Learn virtual presentation series. And today I will be discussing being body positive. So, of course, just in case there are people here who don't know me, my name is Dr. Constance, and I am a family medicine physician in Wilmington, North Carolina. But I've decided that I'll share something new about myself with every session. And so today, a little known fact is that I am the oldest of two children. I'm actually 9 years older than my brother, so I'm not exactly sure what my parents were thinking. Nevertheless, despite the age difference, my brother and I are very close and very much so enjoy spending time with each other. He lives back home in Maryland, where I'm originally from, but he visits here pretty often, which is a joy for me. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. I like to start the session off with a question. Because really, how often do you have real conversations with your doctor? And what I'm getting at with that is recognizing that because of time constraints that us physicians have, we often don't dig deep and avoid some difficult conversations because of fear of lack of time or how much effort it might take during a short period of time to get through everything. But the truth of the matter is that it's really easy to give a diagnosis or place a label on someone, but it takes a little bit more effort and time to get past the surface of who we are as an individual, or in the case of a client or patient scenario, getting deeper than what you can physically see or what you can document in a chart or see in labs, because those things are important to how we interact with the client or a patient. So I'd like to start the conversation off acknowledging that, because truly being body positive starts within yourself, but also with initiating those conversations with healthcare providers and other supportive members of your community, because we help advance the narrative. So, what exactly is body positivity? So, this movement really supports um, acknowledging that every body looks different. And in spite of what your body might look like, you can still be healthy. In fact, there are some people who look at this movement and feel as though people who support the body positive movement are glorifying larger bodies and negating healthy living. But in all honesty, it's the total opposite. In the body positivity movement, is encouraging providers to focus more on a person's actual health status and less on what they physically might look like. And so that's helping us get rid of assumptions that we might have about people based on how they might present to you. This same mentality helps us think about how we approach gender conversations, because how someone might present and how they might identify can be totally different. And in all honesty, it just lends to the conversation, or the age-old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, right? Because the cover just gives you a preview of what you might see, but you have to actually get into the meat of the book to really understand what the author was going for. And that's how we can liken this conversation to us as individuals. You might see one thing on the outside, but that can't tell you much about who an individual is on the inside, what they have to offer, and most importantly, what their health status is. So certainly, as a health coach and physician, the focus should always be on the client or patient, and I'm going to totally acknowledge that. But there's also some benefit in shared experience. So right now, I'd like to take a little bit of time to share my journey and why I feel that the body positivity conversation is important. This picture here is me at the tender age of 10 years old. Roundabout. I remember this was shortly after my brother was born, and we're both born in June. And so I'm pretty sure it was the year after he was first born. And as you can see, I was a chunky little girl. And so certainly, especially this was in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, and thinking about the conversations we had surrounding bodies back then, it was a little tough. And at that time in my life, I had significant issues with asthma. And so because of the asthma and the fact that I was overweight, my primary care provider at the time recommended that my parents encourage me to join a sport. And so at the time, certainly I wouldn't have fully understood all of the things that they were recommending. And that's a challenge as well. And we could save that conversation for another day. But in the frame of reference for a child and the expectations that we have, it's important to approach the subject very delicately, right? Because I don't have any concept of what overweight looks like, or honestly, even with being unhealthy looks like, because in the lens of a child's eye, I am or we are as children exhibiting behaviors and participating in activities that are a function of our environment, what we've been exposed to, and what our little brains know. And certainly there's a lot of space and opportunity to grow, and we're like sponges. But for someone to tell you when you're 10 that you weigh too much and that you need to do something to change that, definitely was a tough situation. And so, but ironically, starting to participate in sports helped shift the conversation. To be successful as an athlete, I did tennis first. That's my first love. I started that actually around the age of 9, and then continue on to play both tennis and volleyball in high school. The conversation went from just focusing on losing weight or my health in by way of asthma, but actually to be a successful athlete, I had to put some effort into it, right? You have to practice, which includes strength training and cardio. And so as I grew older and then transitioned into college, I had that sort of epiphany moment in which I recognized, okay, some people feel that I should lose weight and I should work on these things. But as I focused on something which some people could consider simple as being a better athlete, some other things came into focus for me. My confidence increased. And as I strengthened myself physically, I also improved my self-esteem. And that first started with a de-emphasis on how I look and a focus on something that was actually more tangible in my life, and that was being stronger and more fit. So with becoming more fit, truth be told, I did lose weight or my body changed, but I never became so-called skinny, right? But at that time in my life, you couldn't have told me anything about my weight, because I knew that I was doing what works best for me and I felt good. And so as we continue the conversation here, I have a quote. This is from the motivational author, Louise Hay, and Louise. And it says, "You have been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." In all honesty, to me, this is a good way to summarize what the body positivity movement is focused on. approve of yourself, focus on your health, less about what you look like, and see what happens. Literally just that. And if we actually put the effort into that, we will probably find that we become a lot healthier in general. But to push the conversation specifically surrounding body positivity and why this movement is important, let's get into my first point, which is weight is not the best indicator of health. So, specifically, we think about the weight and BMI, which I'll get into a little bit later also. But weight is complex and multifactorial with a lot of contributors. So, if we think that we can answer multiple questions about an individual and their health based on one thing like weight, we are totally wrong. And in fact, I'm a firm believer that people can be healthy and have a higher weight, which means that we can be healthy at different shapes, sizes, and weight. And so, as we continue forward to specifically discuss the conversation surrounding the BMI, it is totally flawed. In fact, the BMI was created specifically to evaluate European men, and it was invented by a statistician, astrologer, mathematician, and sociologist. This was not someone that was in the medical field at all, and he was trying to evaluate the patterns of death amongst the population in relationship to weight. So this wasn't specifically looking at particular health outcomes, but specifically weight and death. And furthermore, the BMI was not validated in women nor any people of color. And so literally, this ultimately became a way to marginalize people because, again, it started to create or put labels on people without any context. And unfortunately, in many ways, has become a tool of discrimination and racism. A little further down the line in the 70s, 60s and 70s, the BMI actually started to be used more often with insurance companies to make adjustments to insurance rates. And because of how the BMI is structured and the fact that it was not validated in specific populations, in particular women and people of color, then we see that certain populations, in particular women of color, Black women specifically, have the most challenges as far as outlook when it comes to the BMI. And then moving from that conversation, honestly, using the BMI to predict health can be dangerous. And the issue with the BMI is because how we utilize it in our healthcare system, it can lead to eating disorders and contribute to mental health issues. And honestly, the research shows us that dieting and weight cycling actually increases your overall weight in the long run. So the harder that we push dieting and promote an individual to lose weight, eventually they end up weighing more than they probably would have ordinarily weighed. And another interesting tidbit is that some believe that we actually might have a set weight point. So this means that our bodies would prefer to stay within a range, and usually a fairly tight range of weight. And so any efforts to go outside of that can be problematic and ultimately lead to rebound weight loss or weight gain, depending on the scenario. And so the challenge, of course, is that conversations surrounding body positivity are not simple. So while it might come across as a simple concept, be more accepting of your body and encouraging other people to be more accepting of an individual's body, including their own, the fact of the matter is it takes time to reframe how we approach these things. Excuse me. And so this whole concept is completely under construction, not only under construction as a society, but definitely from my perspective, under construction as an individual. Because even though I understand how complex this conversation is, and I understand that there are truths surrounding the fact that a higher weight is not necessarily indicative of a person's health outcomes, it is still hard to combat everything that I've been taught over the years. And in fact, irregardless of what my own personal health status is, there is still sometimes that desire to look a certain way because of pressures from society. And with that being said, if I can understand that within myself, it will be hard for me to fault someone else for wanting to look a certain way. I think some of what we have to continue to explore, though, is not simply wanting to look a certain way, but truly understanding why it is that we want to look that way. And many people would say if we dug deep, it is centered around a system of oppression based on physical appearance, and in particular, less desirable feelings towards those people of larger weight. But as I continue to think about this, a little food for thought. We overemphasize the concern in regards to higher weights, but when is the last time we saw someone that was thin or even extremely thin and we interjected and said something to them in regards to our concerns for their health, their capabilities in the workplace, their ability to find a partner, or along that same vein, their desirability as a partner? That generally does not happen. But when it comes to larger bodies and higher weights, we know for sure that it creates a stigma, and there is certainly discrimination where people of a certain body type and size are less likely to be hired in certain positions. That's a fact. And so as we work through the challenges surrounding body positivity, we all should take the time to put our minds under construction. I encourage you today to focus more on the things that you can do to improve your health outcome without overemphasizing how you look. And in fact, as you continue to improve your mental strength and stamina, your emotional strength and stamina, you might even see changes in your body that are desirable to you. So thank you for joining today. No matter where you are and when you are viewing this, I appreciate your support. We'll be having another, I'll be having another Munch and Learn series next month. Stay tuned for the announcement of what the topic will be. Enjoy.